Hey everyone, you know how much we love to really sink our teeth into a good story, and this one goes way back. So buckle up, because today we're diving headfirst into Homer's Iliad, book 3 to be exact. And let me tell you, things get intense.
It's one thing to hear about like a legendary war, right? But this is where we see the Trojan War explode,
Yeah.
and not just on the battlefield.
Oh, absolutely not.
We're talking about the human cost, the really tough choices, love, duty. It's some heavy stuff.
Yeah, we're going to see how the ancient Greeks dealt with fate, free will, all those big questions that still resonate today. Okay, so to set the scene, we're already in the thick of the Trojan War. Paris, this Trojan prince, he's gone and stolen Helen.
Who just happened to be married to Menelaus, king of Sparta.
Oops.
Yeah, oops, putting it mildly. Menelaus he's not happy about it, to say the least.
Understatement of the century. This guy calls on every Greek hero he can find to get Helen back. And, well, let's just say it's chaos. Total chaos.
And Homer doesn't hold back either. He wants you to understand the sheer scale of this conflict. At one point, he compares the armies to these massive flocks of birds, so many that they, like, block out the sun, the dust from their movements. It's like a fog, almost as if the world itself is groaning under this war.
So we're not just talking about a stolen wife here.
No, this is about honor, revenge. It's the fate of nations. Everything's on the line.
And right in the middle of this mayhem, we get this showdown, this duel between Paris and Menelaus. Can you imagine?
Oh, the tension must have been unbelievable. The whole war, everyone's future, it all comes down to this one fight.
Talk about pressure.
And of course, because it wouldn't be a proper Greek epic without them, the gods are involved.
Oh yeah, front row seats to all the drama.
You've got Venus rooting for her favorite Trojan, Paris, and then there's Jove up on Olympus trying to keep things somewhat fair.
Or at least appear to be fair. We all know how much the gods love to play favorites.
It's true, but that just makes it even more fascinating to see how it all unfolds.
It's like watching a cosmic reality show, right? The gods placing their bets, these two heroes about to risk it all, and everyone else is just holding their breath to see what happens.
And what's amazing is how Homer throws us right into the action. He describes the sunlight flashing off their armor, every detail, every scratch on their shields. It's like you're right there in the dust and the heat of the moment.
He really brings it to life. But even with all the heroic descriptions, you start to realize that these guys, they're not perfect.
Oh, not even close. Menelaus, he's driven by this righteous fury, wants to make Paris pay.
But Paris, he's not exactly what you'd call a fearless warrior.
Let's just say he needs a little encouragement from his brother Hector before he'll even pick up a sword.
And even then, well, we'll get to that, yeah. And Hector doesn't exactly sugarcoat things either, does he? I mean, he lays it on pretty thick. Calls out Paris for caring more about his looks than, actually defending his city.
It's brutal, but you can tell Hector's not doing it to be mean. There's this underlying sense of responsibility there.
Yeah.
Like he's got the weight of Troy on his shoulders, and it's like, come on, Paris, get it together.
Exactly. He's like the responsible older brother who's constantly having to bail out his reckless younger sibling.
Right. And it makes you think about what it really meant to be a hero in Trojan culture, at least according to Homer. Like strength and skill on the battlefield, obviously that's important. But what about the softer arts? Beauty, music, where do those fit in when you're facing a war?
Yeah. It's like, is there room for both? Or are those things seen as weaknesses in the face of danger? Fascinating stuff.
Right. And it's something that's still debated today. What does it mean to be a man? But getting back to the duel, even with Hector's pep talk, let's just say things don't exactly go as planned.
That's an understatement if I've ever heard one. It's almost hard to watch like a train wreck you can't look away from.
Totally. Just when it seems like Menelaus is about to strike the final blow, Venus swoops in and whisks Paris away in a puff of divine smoke.
I can practically hear the Demiris Ex Machina music playing.
Right. It's such a classic example of divine intervention. And, for us today, it might seem a little bit convenient, let's put it that way. But for the ancient Greeks, this was just par for the course.
They probably wouldn't have even blinked an eye.
Right, exactly. For them, the gods were constantly meddling in human affairs. It was just a fact of life.
So it wasn't a question of whether it was fair or not. It was just how things were.
It's a completely different mindset than ours today. We tend to see things in terms of black and white, right or wrong. But the ancient Greeks understood that the world is a lot more complicated than that. Sometimes fate just steps in and throws a wrench in the works.
Even when it comes to something as important as a duel that's supposed to decide the fate of a war.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, what did those soldiers think watching this all go down? Were they outraged? Or just resigned to the whims of the gods? Or maybe a little bit of both.
Probably. But you know what's really interesting? This whole section isn't just about the guys on the battlefield. We also get this incredibly intimate glimpse into Helen's point of view.
She's not just some prize to be won. She's a real person with thoughts and feelings and fears.
And what's really cool is that Homer gives her agency in this story. She's not just a passive bystander. She's actively engaged in what's happening around her.
Right. And it's so rare, especially in these ancient epics.
It really is. So we've got Helen watching this duel from the city walls. And Iris, a goddess disguised as her old handmaid, comes to tell her what's going on.
Talk about a messenger you don't want to ignore.
Right. But here's the thing. When Helen hears about the duel, she doesn't collapse in a heap or anything. Instead, she starts thinking about her past, her home in Greece. It's almost like she's having this out-of-body experience watching her own life from a distance.
That's a great way to put it.
Ah.
And there's this deep sadness in her reflections, a sense of longing for what she's lost.
Right. It's tragic. But at the same time, there's this strength to her, wouldn't you say? Like, even though she's caught in this impossible situation, she hasn't given up hope.
Absolutely. And that strength is really evident in her interaction with Priam, the Trojan king. He asks her to point out some of the Greek heroes, the ones who are all gathered outside the city walls, ready for battle.
And she knows exactly who they are.
Oh, she doesn't just know their names. She gives Priam this whole rundown of their personalities, their strengths and weaknesses. It's amazing.
Like an ancient Greek scouting report.
Exactly. And what's striking is that she doesn't hold back.
Yeah.
She's not afraid to be honest about these guys, even the ones who are considered the greatest heroes of their time.
So what we're saying is Helen's not just a pretty face.
Not at all. And this is where we see that depth of character really shining through. She's intelligent, she's perceptive, and there's this underlying sadness in her words, a sense of loss for the life she left behind.
Right. Because remember, she didn't exactly choose to come to Troy. It's not like she packed her bags and ran off with Paris willingly. This was a abduction.
Right. And she even says as much in this section. There's this incredibly moving passage where she talks about missing her home, her family. She even says she wishes she had died before ever coming to Troy.
That's heavy stuff. It really makes you sympathize with her situation. But even in the midst of all the sadness, she still finds the strength to stand up for herself, especially when Venus tries to manipulate her.
Oh yeah, Venus definitely gets a taste of Helen's backbone in this scene.
I love that she's not some damsel in distress waiting for a hero to save her.
Yeah.
She's a force to be reckoned with in her own right.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that makes Helen such a fascinating character. She's full of contradictions. She's both a victim and a survivor, a pawn in the games of gods and men, but also capable of asserting her own will.
It's like she embodies the complexities of being human, and that's something that we can all relate to no matter what time period we live in.
And you know what's amazing? This richness, this depth of character and theme that we see in Helen's story, it's just the tip of the iceberg. Book 3 of the Iliad is full of these incredible characters, each with their own motivations, their own struggles.
It's true. We haven't even touched on Agamemnon, the leader of the Greeks, or Ulysses, the brilliant strategist. And then there's Hector. Talk about a complex character. A warrior bound by duty and honor, trying to do what's best for his city, even when it means putting himself in danger.
And that's what makes the Iliad so much more than just a war story. It's a story about people, about the choices we make, the things we value, and the sacrifices we're willing to make for those we love.
It's a story that's been told and retold for thousands of years, and yet it still feels relevant today. Why do you think that is?
Because deep down, we're all still grappling with the same questions. What does it mean to be human? What are we willing to fight for? How do we deal with loss and grief? The Iliad doesn't offer easy answers, but it forces us to confront these questions head on.
And maybe that's why it's still so powerful after all these centuries.
Exactly. It's a reminder that even though times change, human nature remains remarkably consistent.
It's a story that stays with you long after you've finished reading it, and it makes you want to keep exploring, to delve deeper into the myths and legends that have shaped our world.
It certainly does. And who knows what other treasures we'll uncover along the way.
That's the beauty of a good deep dive, right? There's always something more to discover.